Good morning. I'm Gonzalo Arcos, and I would like to thank you for coming to this presentation. My purpose is to tell you about a project on which we have been working these last months. We've called it Knowledge Matrix, and the main purpose of this project is to change the way in which we share knowledge in Genexus, to give a big leap with regard to the tools we have to share knowledge. You may wonder why we think that this is important in Genexus ecosystem to share knowledge, what can be gained by it, and I will show you a statement that is not mine. It's from Isaac Newton. He said, "If I have seen further than others, it is by standing upon the shoulders of giants." What he meant is that with regard to these theories and discoveries, he didn't start from scratch. There were a lot of data out there from the scientific community, and that's what he used and he extended. So that's what we want to do with the matrix. We don't want you to start from scratch in each one of your projects. You should be able to reuse many things and components that are already available. They have been created by yourselves in some cases or by others. So why is it good to reuse things? Because you will save a lot of time, you won't have to develop the component of functionality, you will have it ready, and you will make a lot of money in the process. In Genexus, we always say that our mission is to automate what can be automated, and the mission of the matrix would be, therefore, reuse what can be reused. And I would like, with this talk, to change your mindset. That is to say, well, we receive a requirement from the client and we have to start coding. Instead, you can look and see whether this has already been done and can give you more functionality, more personalization. And the matrix can help you before you start doing something else. So in order to define what the matrix is, I'll show you this explanation. It will be a platform in which all knowledge can be shared, discovered, and integrated into our solutions seamlessly. We can explore it, and if necessary, we can integrate it in our solutions and knowledge base. It's important that all of these things can be done easily and with simplicity, that there's no friction for the Genexus user that is already used to working in the IDE. It should be something natural for the user. I'm going to show you more details, therefore, about sharing, discovering, and integrating. But before getting into each one of these aspects, I would like to explain how we are going to interact with the knowledge matrix as a platform. We are going to interact through the clients. Who are going to be our clients? Firstly, we are going to have a CLI client through a command line. And the main objective is to be able to do automating tasks like processing. And in order to give you a practical example of how this can be useful, imagine that we have a KB in continuous integration that is updated continuously, and with this knowledge base we want to generate XPZ or packaged modules on the basis of the content and different versions as the KB evolves. We want this to be available automatically in the matrix and that it can be integrated by other people in their solutions. This would be a scenario in which we need this kind of client in order to be able to automate all that. Another one of the clients with which we are going to interact with the matrix will be Genexus IDE. It's the most important one, the one on which we are focusing, because one of the objectives, as I said, is to have zero friction in the use. As Genexus developers, we are used to being in Genexus IDE, its development environment. So these operations of sharing, discovering, integrating can be done from there. And when I say Genexus IDE, I don't mean only the IDE Win to which we are all used. It could be also the IDE of Genexus M. It would be another place from which we can interact with the matrix. Lastly, we want it to be accessible via the web from any desk or device. You should be able to find what has been published and explore it more in detail. So let's start once again with the three concepts I mentioned at the beginning. Firstly, sharing. We spoke about knowledge in general terms, Genexus knowledge, without specifying what it is or what we are going to share. When we put something available in the matrix, we are going to be publishing an asset. And assets can be categorized and grouped in various kinds of assets. Which are the assets that will become available? XPZ, for example, which can be just one object or a complete chain. Usually it is used as a set of objects that have a certain functionality. For example, the SDK of Mercado Libre, which is available in the wiki or in PayPal and could be available in the matrix so that automatically you integrate it in your solutions. In the second place, packaged modules. It could be chatbot or artificial intelligence, to name some from Genexus, but any module that you can design will be available in the matrix if you wish. Then the user controls the eternal objects, that is the object for the interface of Genexus and its implementation, and also complete KBs of GX server. And I'm not talking about KBs in the traditional sense. It can be a KB that is edited from Genexus M that has been shared in the matrix and whose content can be found. And then this is what is going to evolve. Something important in the design of the matrix is that it can be extended to new types of assets and resources. And if a new concept comes out, it can be extended to it. As Gaston said in his keynote on Monday, we are on the way of incorporating patterns as Genexus objects, and it would be a new type of assets that can be incorporated in the matrix. So this is what we are going to share. Now I'm going to show you how we will share it. And I'll do it from Genexus. I have here a video where I'm going to show you an XPZ. We have to state first which are the objects that we are going to send. And we are going to use the export dialog, which solves very well the selection of the objects. But instead of doing the classical action of exporting, we're going to select the new dialog of sharing. And there we have to put in the name with which we want to define the XPZ, the version, the author, the owner, and a brief description. There are also some features that are used only for searches. So you can complete these fields, or if you want, you can leave them by default, because what we want is not to create unnecessary restrictions that may discourage the users from sharing things. If a user wants to upload something quickly, he will be able to do it. Once the dialog has been configured, the export process starts in order to generate the XPZ, and the registration, the publication, will be done in the matrix. and then it says share asset here, and the registration starts. It is registered in the matrix, and the upload is done. In the case of a packaged module, the scenario would be similar, but we would do it from a dialog of packaged module. For you to be familiarized, we have a new version of share, and we will be able to publish it in the matrix. So what's going on underneath? Genexus makes a package with a package module or XPZ objects. The matrix registers this content, creates a publication, creates a new asset, and indexes not only what you put in the dialog, but also the content, and that's very important. So if you send the XPZ with a customer transaction, then you will be able to find it even if you didn't describe it. The content is very important when you do a search and you want to find something. In the case of packaged module, we don't have the complete content of the objects, we just have an interface, but there are important data that we can index, for example, the documentation, the variables, etc. So this is a case in which we have a publication where the content cannot be changed. It's there and it can be changed, and if I want to do a new publication I can, but it will be a new version. It's not that I changed what I've published, but it's not always like this. In the case of the knowledge bases, the way of sharing is just by declaring it from the console of the X server or when you send the KB. And this is a different case. Up to here, it's like the other one. We make the initial publication in the matrix, and we register our content, and it is indexed, and so far it's the same thing. But what happens if afterwards I modify the KB with a commit, or by changing it, by adding an object or whatever? We want this to be possible to be found in the matrix, that the content is dynamic, in the content of the KB is dynamic. So in this case, when the developer does the commit and modifies the KB, automatically the KB will modify the content index in the matrix. This is what Jose Lama said in his opening presentation of Genexus as a platform on Monday. He said that on the one hand we have the explicit publications when I declare that I want those objects, and on the other hand we have implicit publications. I say I want to send this knowledge base, but I don't know what it will have in the future, and therefore I want it to be updated automatically. Now another commit, it modifies once again, and the matrix is updated, and so on. So this is the first pillar, the sharing, so that we can share easily any content from the IDE. And next, the discovery, how we will be able to visualize the content and find it and explore it more in depth. In Genexus, we are going to have a new dialog, knowledge matrix, and there we will have a list of all of the resources, the assets that have been published. As you can see, we have Mercado Libre's SDK that states that it's an XPZ, and then Genexus chatbot, and on the right hand side you see that it can be a package module or another kind. So we have the description, the name, and an image to identify it, and here we have two actions: explore and integrate. This means that beyond the description we will be able to see the content if we explore it, and integrate what we want to obtain for our use. Now, it won't be practical to explore the whole catalog that is available. In the future it should have a lot of content, but And therefore, for it to be really useful, the search is very important. We decided to use Elasticsearch, that you may know. It's a search engine that is very much used and has become very popular because it has excellent features that are very important. When you use a search engine, for example, it's scalable. The greater the demand, the greater the speed. There's no bottleneck. And then it's a fault tolerant. If one of the nodes falls, there will be another one that will cover the demand. The indexing is very fast, almost in real time. And finally, and more importantly, the response time is very short. The search is very fast. And I found in internet various big players, various clients that use this search engine, but I would like to focus in particular on the eBay, which says that by using Elasticsearch they have been able to search in 800 million lists in a few seconds. So that's the power of the search engine that we are using, and we believe that it will be according to the demands and the expectations we have. Once the search has been solved, let me show you what happens when we decide to explore an XPZ like the one of Mercado Libre. We open it in the IDE and we will be able to open all of the objects in the editor, see all of the parts and the code, and copy the code if we want. Without having to do any official integration, we can copy the code if it's useful, and we are almost in real time and remotely exploring the resource that has been published. Moreover, we can copy controls and multiple things. In the case of a package module, the process would be similar. The module has its interface, its services, its data, and we'll be able to see everything. And if it's a KB that has been published, well, you may remember that last year we presented an Explorer for remote KBs. We have a remote folder view where we can see all of the content of the KB. Like in XPZ, we can open the object and if we want, copy the code, the variables, etc. And a particular feature in this case, and here I'm opening a procedure which takes a little time because it goes to the server to obtain it. Well, here I'm showing the variables, the rules, etc. And what we will be able to do with this dialog, if we want, is to select objects and import them directly in our KB. Here we have a separate list, which is the list from which we export. And if we want, we have a button here for ID. Here is the discovery part, the catalog of resources and how we can do a search and explore more them more in detail if we want. And now integration. I have already found what I want and I want to bring it to my KB. It could be said that in this case it's quite simple. We have already found the XPZ in the IDE and we have to import it, and it shouldn't require a lot of work. But in fact, you may think that that's the case, and then we get an error like this one. And this happens when we want to import or integrate something that has a dependence that we don't have in our KB. And it's something that we should be able to solve automatically. Nowadays, if you have a kind of an error of this kind, you have to go to the user control, install it, etc. But what we want to solve and what we want to do is that it's transparent for you. You choose to integrate a certain resource, and the knowledge matrix calculates the dependencies and integrates the resource and the dependence. These are the different kinds of resources. They may have dependents, and we will have to integrate them with the resource. And here I want to show you in Genexus a basic case of a packaged module. We have this for modules, but now we are going to go to the knowledge matrix and integrate a new one. From Airpol, I just put this name to the package module, which we want to integrate. Here it's calculating the necessary dependence for our KB, and it says us we need this other module in order to install the previous one. If we say no, then the operation fails. The installation can be done. But let's say yes, we want it to install the dependence. And here we see that the integration starts, and we have not only the module we want, but also the dependence. And we see already in the folder that both modules have been packaged. So we have solved the question of the dependence automatically, and this matter is quite a headache for the users at present. Another question we would like to solve is the updates. As I said, we will be able to publish different versions of the same resource for XPZ and packaged modules, etc. And we want the user to find out easily what the updates are. So from the same dialog, we will be able to see this. And finally, I would like to tell you about the next steps. As I said, this is a project that started a few months ago and still work in progress. And the next steps is to release on beta channel, to have a knowledge matrix that allows for the integration with the client. I mentioned the IDE already. So we are going to have a release on beta channel, and the release will be not only on our official server, but also you will be able to package the knowledge matrix, because nowadays the idea is to be able to share generally for everyone, but you as a company may want to share only for your own company, and this is fine. Another step, another milestone in the roadmap is that at the moment there's a lot of knowledge available in public servers and the marketplace that we want to make accessible through the knowledge matrix. So we want to register all of that content. Physically, we're not going to move it, but we have to register it in the matrix. And finally, something for the future, but very interesting, we have to see what we can do with all this data. We say we are going to be publishing data constantly, XPZs, etc., contents, knowledge, and this will be a big source of information and data for many analyses. If you have attended presentations about artificial intelligence in this event, you may have realized that for machine learning and artificial intelligence, it's important to have a lot of data. So a practical example of how this will impact us for sharing and for other purposes would be to have a much more personalized development environment. What does it mean? Well, we have several bases published in the matrix, and we want to have them registered. We know they are ours, and by analyzing the content of our objects, we start a new knowledge basis, and we want a transaction with the customer. The matrix can suggest the rules of the business and some attributes, and on the basis of things that we have already published and that are identified as a pattern that is repetitive. So to sum up, I wanted to tell you about the Knowledge Matrix, a platform that will allow us to share knowledge in order to reuse what is reusable and not having to solve problems again and again from scratch, so that you can focus on innovating and being creative. And that is why we say that the Knowledge Matrix is the power of sharing. I invite you to try it when it's available, because it will have a lot of power, and the power will depend on what each of us publishes and the content we generate. The power of sharing, in the end, will allow us to focus on solving problems that haven't been solved yet, and in doing and in developing our applications. That is why we say it's the power of doing.